Well, Gold Derby fans, he plays the sociopath that people cannot stop watching on Netflix's You. I'm Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby, and joining me is Penn Badgley. Thank you so much for talking with me.
Thank you for having me.
So this show, it's journey to season 2 journeys to Los Angeles. We moved from New York to Los Angeles, and each of these seasons is based on one of the novels, and this one based on Hidden Bodies. Is it worthwhile for you to sort of read those and draw inspiration from those, or do you have to treat them as its own separate entity?
I'd say the way that it's most valuable is just for me to appreciate Carolyn Kepnes as the generator of this whole concept, you know, and as the establisher of not just tone, but like, I don't know, just the themes that the whole thing is dealing with. And nature, I mean, it's really important for me to understand how the book functions because he, you know, it's all inside his mind, just, you know, without any exception. Whereas the show has to be a bit different because it's not a book. So in that sense, I think it was just important for me to understand the whole kind of like the device and then also just the spirit with which Carolyn created it. Past that, actually, it's sometimes it's almost harmful if you pay attention to the source material too much past, you know, which is beyond the script. Like, you know, you really have to just forget about that, I think, at the end of the day. Because there are also some pretty significant differences. And then I think once I really let go of any idea of Joe from the book, understanding that it was established, I think that's when I felt the most freedom as an actor. And I would imagine that's true in a lot of adaptations.
Yeah. And I'm curious about your kind of process and way into this role, because he's kind of a terrible person. He's murderous. He's manipulative. But the audience can't help but get sucked into what's going on with him anyway. And I know a lot of like actor training, and actors would say you have to find a way to like your character or be interested by your character. So is that true for you? And how do you kind of find a way into be interested and like Joe?
I don't think it's hard to hate him, and I don't think it's hard to love him. He's a human, you know, and I think it's really easy to think we would hate people when we don't know them. But of course, it's the people who know them who tend to love them, you know, or at least like them, or at least tolerate them. Whereas when I watch Joe, I'm like, I wouldn't tolerate this, you know. But for me, you know, as vocal as I have been, I think often for the sake of comedy and morale more than anything else. But as vocal as I've been, like sort of against Joe, he's very easy for me to inhabit or love because, you know, he really does want what we all want, which is to be loved. And I think what was great about season 2 was that became is ironic the right word? It became such an ironically literal metaphor because the character he was after was named Love as well. And you know, if we didn't do that with the right kind of nuance, and I didn't, I mean, just want to love as much as I could, you know, maybe that would fall flat a bit, but it seems like we pulled it off.
Yeah, and you know, he has this sort of thing this season where he really wants to prove that he's a good person. You know, when you kidnap Robin Lord Taylor's character, and he's very protective of Ellie, protective of young people. Do you see that as a genuine aspect of him? How do you kind of square that side with the murderous side?
I mean, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I don't ever, as much as again, as I might say something different in an interview because it's such a different space, when I'm acting, when I'm there, I mean, no, I don't, it's all genuine. It's all genuine. Even if the point is that he doesn't mean it. I think the point is with people with psychosis is that they're unreliable narrators for themselves. We all are, but especially then, you know, I mean, he might actually be trying to change. He just might not have the capacity to mean it past the moment he says it. So, but yeah, I just make him mean it, because again, I think that makes for a more compelling journey along the way. If I was to telegraph, because of some, you know, like compulsion to just make sure that we know this is a clinical portrayal of a person with psychosis, like, I don't know, that probably wouldn't be as interesting, you know, along the way.
Right. He has like that's kind of one of the things he's battling. Again, he has a lot more adversaries, I would say, this season than in
That's
season
true,
one.
yeah.
A lot of things.
Yeah.
Is that more fun to play? Because it's kind of like, you know, in season one, it was often like, oh God, this person's in his way. They're going to get it. But this time there's a lot of things that muck up his plan. Is that more fun to play?
I know that season two was more fun generally. That's probably why. I mean, like episodes 1 and 2, especially 2, it's almost hijinksy in the sense that he's trying to get, I don't want to spoil, I don't know if I'd be spoiling it. He's trying to get his finger back.
Yeah.
Which is funny, you know, and that was one I had a lot of fun with. And yeah, he does. When I really think about it, his behavior has modified slightly towards the better in the second season. He's not. He's really. I think the way that things turn for the worst is far less intentional. But of course, he sets us up in the beginning. By the end of the first episode, you know how conscious he is about the lion's share of what he's doing. I mean, he's still built the cage, right? That takes a lot of energy. So, you know, once you've built the cage in a new location, I think you can give a lot of lip service to trying to change, but he's probably not.
And I wanted to, one of the most impressive things I think about the performance and what I would imagine is difficult is that there's so much voiceover material and there's so many really extended scenes that just ask you to emote without dialogue. What is the process of filming those like for you? Is that as difficult as it would seem?
I think it's become almost in a way, it's its own skill that once you've honed it, it's just another skill. And sometimes it's even easier than others because I don't need to rely on literally anyone else. That's, you know, sometimes it can be quite isolating. But then there's something about that I don't know. The entire experience of me shooting this show wouldn't be quite what it is if I didn't have such a kind of singular, I almost want to say it's not a burden. Joe is he's burdensome, but it's like, you know, trying to emulate what the book created, which is all inside of his mind. It's a device that you just can't actually create in any other medium. But I do, yeah, I mean, like the voiceover, going inside the voiceover booth is extremely fun now, even when I'm saying things that are, they're very painful. I'm able to just close my eyes and put all of the focus of what was normally be in my body as an actor, and focus it all here, you know, like in my mouth and my kind of chest and throat. It's very spiritual. It's very, sometimes I'm very surprised with how just spontaneous emotions come and powerfully, and they'll fly out and change. And I just try to run with that and have fun with the voiceover, so that when I'm doing what you see visually, hopefully I'm doing as little as possible. You know, I mean there is a lot of emoting. There's a lot of emoting, but it's dialing in how much of that to show, how much to play against what he's saying. You know, it becomes this very fun dance with myself. That I can't even always anticipate, but just time after time it works so well. Like I often record the voiceover before we've shot it, which you wouldn't think might technically work, but it just somehow, it's just like, I guess what I came to understand was the rhythms of even the editing, you know, I mean, it's a very technical kind of thing to have to be conscious of. You really have to be conscious of what the shot is, how the director and the editor are really going to tell that story. It's helpful to know. So I increasingly would ask directors and I would have to even kind of anticipate that in a voiceover booth. So it's, yeah, there's something about it that I really like.
I was wondering.
The question. But.
I think so. But I was wondering about the voiceover booth, because I know for a lot of like voiceover actors, they get very physical inside the booth. And
yeah,
Joe, like as Joe, you tend to have this like very kind of like poised, put together physicality with him. So does kind of your process change, the way you go about the character change when you're only limited to your voice in the booth?
I mean, I know that I just use my body differently. I mean, I personally just sort of raise my hands, like it's a, what is it? It's like it's conjuring something, because depending on the way anybody uses their voice, I mean, a lot is communicated of your tone in your face. I mean, the face is just this like valuable source of information when you're reading somebody's energy. And without that, yeah, I mean, you really do have to, the inflections, if you were to do it in person, obviously it'd be like, whoa, man, why are you talking to me like that? But it works so well. So yeah, it's just, it is very animated. Like, as much as Joe is a bit stoic often, I think my body becomes quite animated, but in a way that I'm not conscious of. It's not out there, you know what I mean? It's not like, even if I'm using my limbs and stuff, it's not out there. It's still, it's like all to get it coming out through there.
Well, another new character this season that you mentioned was Love, the character Love, and you and Victoria Pedretti have such great chemistry from moment one that they kind of click. And I'm wondering, did that come about in the rehearsal process? Did it come naturally? How did you guys sync up that way?
You know, in television, you don't get a lot of rehearsal. That's just like a matter of fact. So it happened, I think, pretty instantaneously. I think, you know, in our first read together, when she was, I mean, I think she had the role, but it was still technically a test. You know, I flew in to LA during another press trip, I believe, and so I met her very briefly. And that was when Greg and Sarah gave me a little bit of an arc of what the second season would look like. And I could tell in that first, I mean, you know, she's very new, in the sense that, you know, I think one of her first auditions she got, and that was one of the things that was either maybe the Tarantino film, or that was maybe this other, I mean, you know, she started working immediately. So it's an interesting thing where she's really honed her craft in conservatory. She's very young. She's talented and developed as an artist, mature, but then there's just a matter of, you know, just like being on set a lot and becoming experienced over time. So I think that was the thing where, I mean, you know, it was like from that first audition to the first week on set, I think even there was a lot of just exponential growth for her. And it was really natural for me to just sort of appreciate, I think, her excitement, her dedication to this craft, you know. And so, yeah, I mean, I think we just always had like a great spiritual connection, and it just plays on camera.
Yeah. What one of my favorite moments, I think, of this season, which I guess minor spoiler if you haven't watched season 2 already, but it combines both of your chemistry and the sort of voiceover work, is that moment where you have an actual confession over what you've done to Love, and you. It's sort of the first time. It's one of the first times that he's really honest about things and doesn't try to mask anything. And I'm wondering what that change was like for you, and what filming that scene was like for you.
You mean like right towards the end, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. When Yeah, I remember reading that and just being like, wow, okay. So he's, I mean, spoiler alert, if you really don't want to know, maybe just turn the volume down or something. Because I can't really talk about it without saying something. I mean, yeah, like when he's in the box, it's tough in a way because he's got nowhere to go. He's got nothing else to do. And again, with Joe, it was never an intellectualization thing, but for some reason I'm just very still with him. I don't like to move a lot. I don't like to use my hands as much as I do in person, certainly. It's almost like he's been so traumatized that he's at all times waiting for to be abused again, which is why he abuses everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So once he's in the box and he's having to tell his love exactly what he's done, I was daunted. I mean, I was really daunted. I was like, wow, he's just got to say it all, and I'm in the box. I got nothing but my emotions to make it resonate. Yeah, and I don't know what else to say about that. It was definitely daunting, and it was refreshing. I think sometimes it kind of like in the voiceover booth, it sort of came spontaneously. Like if you just really connect to what you're saying, what he's saying is so terrible. Like I did this, I did that, I've done this. This is who I am. It's really the words do the work. I think if you're doing your job as an actor.
Well, it's very thrilling to watch because it was such a like dramatic shift from what we're used to seeing from him.
Yeah.
And there's a lot in this season that's very twisty turny. And do you get your hands on sort of all the scripts before everything, so you know what twists are coming up, or do you find out all that stuff like episode to episode while you're shooting?
I know the major points. Like both Victoria and I knew. Actually, again, I'll give you a little bit of spoiler thing here. Why not? We're just digging.
It's all out right now.
Yeah. We both knew in the end that she was going to be revealed to be much like Joe. But we both, I think part of what that chemistry you were speaking of earlier, we both assumed that it would mean that they would kind of go off into the sunset, so to speak, like Bonnie and Clyde, like that they were actually perfect. The whole point is that they were perfect for each other. What really helped me establish chemistry and a bond with Victoria as the actress and Love as this concept was that I knew that Joe at least wasn't going to do it again. He wasn't going to kill Beck again. He wasn't going. It just, even as an actor, as an artist, it's inspiring to know that there's this other trajectory. You're not just going to do the same thing again. So the major upset for both of us when we found out was that, yes, they discover each other's true nature, but of course, what that means is that Joe's not satisfied. I mean, he can't be. That's the whole point, so it was really easy to actually be upset about that. Like, Joe, it was really, really heart-wrenching. So we know as much as we need to know, but not so much so that we'll almost like telegraph anything or get bored with it along the way,
Mm-hmm. And this, I think people are really drawn to all those big twists. And, the first season started on Lifetime. It made a jump to Netflix as a Netflix original for season 2. But when they put the first season on Netflix, it exploded. And then season 2 comes out on Netflix and that really explodes. So what has that been like for you watching this huge wave of new audience?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny you're saying that now because I think it wasn't long after season 2 aired that we all had to start staying home. Mm-hmm. And that's been a very interesting thing because I've not really been thinking about this at all. And I forget that it really wasn't that long ago that season 2 came out and really seemed to increase even the response it had the first season. It's like a meme and a half, this thing. And it is quite surreal. Yeah, I mean, I think what's exciting for me is this prospect of being on a show that so deftly navigates the conversations of the moment, is sort of like a player in those conversations to some degree, doesn't fall on its face, and then is both serious and fun at the same time. That's actually quite rewarding. That's really, I think that's different from anything I've been a part of. Either it's been something small, gone mostly unrecognized, incredibly rewarding nonetheless, or something that's like quite huge and sensational, but maybe not taken as seriously, you know. And so and I think what's been rewarding is to see that interesting balance sort of struck by this whole enterprise. So everybody's really, I think, grateful for that too, and everybody's really like firing on all cylinders. So it's nice. It's nice to be a part of that.
Well, that sounds like a great experience, and we can't wait to see what befalls Joe in season 3. What he gets up to in that season.
Yeah, me either.
So everyone who's watching, please subscribe to Gold Derby. Make sure you keep up to date with all of our coverage during Emmy season. And Penn, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.